I have indeed, and look at that. That's the best birthday present you could ever wish for, and it's our young male Hosana. So I've just come down right onto the southern boundary, checked around the Mulawati, and, well, as we came out of the Mulawati, this was what greeted us, is a little leopard sitting right next to the road. So how obliging of Hosana to be sitting there right next to us. I'm so excited to see him, and he's looking wonderful as always. Our young boy has really blossomed into a fine individual, and he's been all over the place lately, but super excited that he's around here and that he's in this area. Of course, he is just south of the boundary at the moment, so he is technically in Little Gowrie, but he's right on the road, which is perfect. And hopefully, given that he was south the whole... Oh, what's wrong, boy? No, you had a tough night. Maybe he partied with Scott last night, and that's why he's feeling a bit sorry for himself and putting the paw over his face. I think it's also there's a number of flies around that are maybe biting him, but look at the size of that paw now. His paws have gotten massive, and in relation to the size of his head is pretty incredible. What are you doing, boy? He's a funny cat, this individual. Now, I believe a lot of you are excited that I managed to find a leopard on my birthday. Well, I can't tell you how excited I am myself. It's such a cool thing to see, and I really was giving up hope a little bit because I didn't really think we'd be able to find anything, given that we have a situation where, you know, we've checked all the usual spots, and I was a bit concerned that I think I was going to go without a leopard on my birthday morning. But as you can see, things have changed slightly, and we've managed to find it. Now, there is Peter behind me, and Peter is going to join us with a leopard right here. So he's, unfortunately, I don't think Peter noticed that it was there, but anyway, I'm just going to say hello to Peter. Hello, Villiers. How are you guys? Thank you very much. So everybody on the vehicle is saying happy birthday, which is very kind of them. It's got two friends on the vehicle. One is Peter, who obviously works at Nkoro, and I know very well, and the other one is a guy called Villiers, who Villiers is a photographic guide, and he spends a lot of time here, and he lives in Hoedspruit, and is one of our very good friends from Hoedspruit, and his wife and Ali are very good friends, and so that's why they know it's my birthday. So all the guests were just saying happy birthday, which is very kind of them. It's not something that I would have expected from them, but that's very nice. Now, Hosana, I think, is going to have a very big nap. It is starting to get warm now, so I think for now he's going to be fairly sleepy. The thing is that he is right on the main road, which means that I'm pretty sure this individual is going to wake up and probably move. Now, I'm really hoping that today he heads towards Twin Dams, and that this afternoon he sits at Twin Dams and just really kind of entertains us the way that he likes to do, particularly at that dam itself. He's been an absolute treat, and we were talking earlier about highlights, and one of my biggest highlights, or two of them, has been with Husana at Twin Dam. So one with the Tumba incident, like I was discussing earlier, and the second one was watching him stalk impalas on the dam wall. It has got to be one of the most epic stalks I've seen, not because he actually was successful or because of, you know, anything else other than the fact that the light was absolutely unbelievable. He leopard crawled straight towards us. We had him on his belly walking straight basically at the camera, and then he sat and he hid in complete open with the impalas walking past him, and it was just the most amazing display of camouflage, and also just of Hosana's coming of age, because he went from, you know, a young male that was hunting terrapins, and then when I watched him with those impalas, I realized very quickly that this individual has figured out exactly how to do things. He might have missed and not gotten anything, but given what he was working with and the open space that he was in, it was just unbelievable to watch him going about his thing, and to see how patient he's become. He was waited, and he allowed those impalas to come really close, and he didn't flinch at all until, unfortunately, the last impala spotted him. But it was an amazing display of Hosana's kind of prowess and his character as he's gone about things. It's so funny, though. I almost drove right past him. I thought I didn't even see him. I was busy looking for tracks in this area and kind of driving around, and then I reversed slightly, and I just saw this face staring at me. So we almost ended up driving right past him, which would have been a bit of a tragedy. But anyway, at least we've managed to find him and catch up with him. But how beautiful is he looking? He doesn't seem to have a very full belly at this stage, but he has been feeding quite well. So since he's been on Little Gowrie, I know that he's had a number of different kills. He's been eating duiker and steenbok, and he's had a few scrub hares that he's killed. So he's done just fine, and he's been feeding quite nicely, and so he's really looking very good. Sassy, you say he's growing up into such a handsome boy. He is, isn't he? He's becoming a really stunning individual, and like I say, he's becoming big and powerful, and he's starting to look more and more like a male leopard. The other day when I saw him and I saw that little dewlap starting, it's almost like a proud moment when you see a leopard kind of coming of age and that little dewlap starts to hang down, and it really is very special to see him growing. And we've been so fortunate, we've been really spoilt, and I know I've said this a lot of times, and unfortunately it's probably not going to last for many more months, but we've been absolutely spoilt by Hosana and Tamba. The two young boys have been the core of our leopard sightings for the last few months, and they've thoroughly entertained. They've both got their own uniqueness about them. Both of them are extreme characters in their own regard, in that they both kind of get up to nonsense all the time, and they really have been two individuals that have thoroughly looked after us over the past few months. You know, with the loss of Karula and her not being around, it's been a wonderful thing to be able to have these guys with us and to be able to see them, you know, on a day-to-day basis, and to see them as regularly as we have has been a very special thing. And I'm pretty happy that Tingana has been as tolerant as he has, because, you know, without his tolerance, I would have thought Hosana might have been long gone from here. And we know Tamba is pushing south at the moment into Male Male. Why he's down there, I'm not quite sure, but hopefully he'll be pushed back up into this area, and we'll see the two of them up in this section again at some stage soon. Right, while we sit with little Hosana, who hopefully will wake up at some point, although I think he's found himself a nice shady spot and seems as though he's going to be really pleasantly sleeping in that shade. Let's go back to Noel, who I think is looking at something that maybe Hosana might want to get into at some stage today. Well, I think Hosana, like I say, is going to have a really solid nap right next to the road. I think he's decided this is where he's going to sleep for now. He's got a beautiful shady spot from the guarri tree, but as that sun is starting to go up now, so that shade is getting less and less and less. And if we sit here for a while, I would imagine that shade is going to dissipate, and he might then start to wake up and move. I think he's probably going to go northwards, hopefully towards Twin Dams, and might settle there for the afternoon. That's at least what I think anyway, but you never know. He's a little man on his own mission these days, and he tends to go up and down all over the place. Michael, you're asking if the cat's foot pads ever wear out. So, no, not that I've ever seen. I mean, I've never seen a foot pad wear out. In fact, you'd probably find they get more calloused than anything else. So they get to a situation where they kind of become quite sort of hard, and it's much like our feet. I mean, our feet don't wear out and our pads don't wear out, and so we have a situation where, you know, we end up kind of, the more we utilize our feet, the harder they become, and the more resilient they are to wear and tear. And so, no, their pads never wear out. And I know with Safari, who was a 19-year-old leopard, which is incredibly old, much older than we would have thought, that 19-year-old leopard had perfect pads underneath. Her pads were still fine. There was nothing wrong with them. So, no, they don't really wear out. It's part of their body. I suppose they might lose a bit of kind of tread on them, or if you want to call it that, and they might wear a little bit, but the more they're kind of using them, the more they're callousing, and the more that they kind of harden up, and so walking over thorns and various other things doesn't hurt them that much. But it's what is surprising with Hosana is just how much bigger his feet have gotten in the last few weeks. I don't know why I've noticed it a lot more. Tamba has always had the big feet, but Hosana's have seemed to have bulked up quite a bit. If you look at his kind of face in relation to his paws, Hosana's not a small leopard now. He's got quite a bulky head already. I was saying his dewlap is starting. But if you look at that front paw has gotten really large. What you can also see, though, is when you look at a paw from the top and you actually see the pad, is two different things. And so you'll see that he's got quite a big sort of foot structure, but the pad itself is actually fairly small within that foot structure. So that's why in soft sand their feet look bigger than on hard ground. And so his actual pad size is not going to be the size of his foot. Now, Lily, you're asking if there's a direct correlation between his foot size and how big he's going to be. No, not necessarily. Generally, it is the case, though. All the leopards that I've seen that have had really large feet have generally been quite big individuals. But I have seen individuals with small feet that are also quite large. So if you go down to the south of the reserve, there's a couple leopards there that, I mean, Sand River Male was one of them. His track wasn't massive, but he was quite a big leopard. So it's not always the case, but generally the larger the leopard, the larger their feet. Now, when they're young like this, it can be a bit deceiving because every leopard proportionately looks as though it's got big feet. So Tumba, Hosana, they always look like their feet are a little bit bigger than what they are. The reason why I always say Tumba's feet are large is because I've seen Tumba and Tingana's tracks side by side when they walked together the one time in the Muluwati, and there is very little discernible difference between those two leopards. Now, one is a 12-year-old dominant male, the other one is a sort of year-and-a-half-old young male, and his tracks are still the same size as a fully grown dominant male. And Tingana is not a small male by any stretch of the imagination, and his track is not small. So Tumba's got quite large feet for his age, and that might mean that he's going to be a big leopard. I don't know. He's slowly but surely developing, and I've watched him and I've seen him and Hosana together, and even though he's 6 months younger, he's not too far off Hosana's size. So it'll be interesting to see. Also, you know, the rate of growth is different for each individual. There's also genetics involved as to who's going to be bigger. But normally, the bigger the animal, the bigger the feet, and that's how you see it. But when they're young like this, you can't always tell. It's just proportionately, sometimes the feet look big. Luke, so you're wondering about the leopard's back legs and whether or not they're used as a spring for jumping. Well, Luke, the thing is about their legs is if you look at them, if you look at the back legs, they are very slender and very long. Now, that means that those legs are designed exactly for, like you're saying, they're designed to, one, to launch out and to be able to get speed and to keep them going to chase things. Two, there's obviously a jumping effect that comes from long legs with very big, powerfully defined hip muscles, and so yes, the back legs are designed for them to be able to spring and to jump, and a leopard can jump incredibly high. There's some amazing videos out there of leopards jumping and catching impalas and various other animals from in midair where they go at least 3 or 4 times the height of their body into the air and grab things. It's really quite amazing to watch, and that's all from that back leg area. The front paws are all there for power. That's what those are there for. So those will be the initial kind of pull off the ground to be able to run after something. And then also to be able to grip and pull things down and then pull their bodies up into trees. So you'll find that the front area is powerful, very strongly built, and it's almost like a weightlifter, whereas the back section is all more like a sprinter that is thin and narrow and very muscular and defined. So most definitely those back legs play a huge part in a leopard being able to jump and spring. The front legs don't do nearly as much work for that. The front legs are all for the heavy lifting, so to speak, and to be able to pull them up into trees and be able to then pin down prey animals when they're hunting. And you can imagine how powerful these leopards must be. I mean, when he was a little bit younger, he was you know, not very old at all. He was sort of 16 months and was still being able to bring down fully grown male impalas. So it just shows how strong those front legs are, and the ability to leap is also quite amazing. Right, now we're going to carry on with Hosana, because why not? It's just a good way to spend a morning. While we do that, I believe Noel is on the tracks of something rather prickly and apparently has its little dung to show you. He's sleepy and he's not really doing much, but there's not really much else going on, and so I thought, well, might as well spend time with the leopard. You never know. That's the nice thing about leopards, is you never know what's going to happen. Also, if you have a look now, the shade that I was talking about is slowly but surely creeping quickly towards those feet. I suppose not slowly and surely and quickly. It can't be both, but it is quickly going towards him. So the shade when we first arrived was about 2 meters to the right on the other side of that fallen over or broken tree, and you can see now it's already come all the way towards him. So I think if we just sit here for long enough, the sun is going to start coming out and hitting him, and when the sun hits him, then I think we're going to see him maybe get up and move, and hopefully move in a different direction. Now, you might be asking why I've changed where I've positioned, because it's not the better view, but there are a number of other vehicles here, and just given the way he's lying, it's difficult for anybody else to see nicely but where we were. So I'm just being polite and allowing some of the other people that have come out here and you know, don't get as many chances to see leopards as what we do, to get a chance to see clearly and to be able to see in the best gap that there is. And anyway, it's not too bad a view. If he does sit up, we will be able to see him nicely anyway. Chitty Chatty Meg, no. Hosana's a little bit young to be a father. I mean, potentially he might be producing sperm to be able to fertilize an egg. That I'm not 100% sure of, but generally, no. I mean, he is very young still. He's not even reached 2 years old yet. and even young males that mate would be about 2.5, 3. I mean, that's the earliest I've seen males mating. So he's still a little on the young side. Like I say, I don't think he's producing enough sperm yet to be able to actually fertilize an egg. Also, at the end of the day, females won't mate with him. So Tundi, Shadow, any of the females in this area know that he's a young male. They know that there's more dominant males out here, and it's just a risk to mate with him and have cubs with him, because he's not strong enough to defend a territory yet, and he's not actively marking. So he won't be mating yet. I think it will be still some time until he starts mating, probably I would say a year and a half, and until you actually see him getting up into any mating sort of schedule. There's of course always outliers, and you never know. Maybe Hosana's a little game player and he can get involved early. Who knows? Maybe he's taken a leaf out of Taylor's gerbil book and is going to be one of those that's going to get involved a little earlier in age. Of course, it also depends on the dominant males. If you get a situation where there's a few dominant males that disappear in the form of, let's say, Tingana decides to move out and is no longer in this area, then you might get a situation where he might start mating a lot earlier. If you look down in the south of the reserve, there's a male called the White Dam male. Now, I know James, who watches the show regularly, absolutely loves the White Dam male, and he's mating at a very young age. I mean, he's about 3 years old and he's mating. So we're in the company of a dominant male. So it's not impossible that Hosana could be mating fairly soon, but highly unlikely and highly improbable, should we say. James, it's fairly typical for a male of his age to start seeing a dewlap. I mean, it's not always the case, and obviously dewlaps are genetic. If we look at two different leopards in the form of Anderson and Tingana, you'll notice that Anderson has a very small dewlap in comparison to Tingana's. Tingana's dewlap kind of comes from his throat down all the way to his chest, whereas Anderson doesn't quite have that dewlap, even though Anderson is a fully grown dominant individual that's got territory and all of that kind of thing. He just doesn't have the same size dewlap. So there's a fair amount of genetic to it, and some males will end up with bigger dewlaps than others. If you look at Mbavala down in the south of the Sabi Sands, he's got a massive dewlap as well, and it makes him more imposing. So Hosana might just be one of those individuals that is going to end up with a really big dewlap. If you look at him in comparison to Tumba doesn't even have anywhere close to that skin hanging down yet at all, and so it's going to be interesting to see if Tumba also develops it early or if it's later. But I suppose it is a little early for him. It's not something that you see all that often with a sort of 2-year-old male. Generally they don't have too much of a dewlap developing, but maybe he's going to be a big individual and take after his dad like Tingana and have a really big, massive fold of skin underneath his neck. Either way, he's starting to become more and more impressive. I mean, the dewlap is only going to add to his appearance and add to his size and his kind of overall aura that he'll have about him. And so I'm pretty sure we're going to get to a situation where he will eventually look really quite threatening and dominant. And when that does happen, I'm pretty sure Tingana is going to take exception. My interest in Tingana is big at the moment, and the reason why is I feel like Tingana is being pushed a lot harder than we've seen him being pushed ever before. There's definitely a shift and a sway in what's going on, because it's the first time I've ever heard of Tingana kind of having an altercation on a kill and the other male still being in that area the next morning. Normally Tingana is very good at evicting and getting people out, and when he had that little altercation with Quarantine, the next morning Quarantine was still in that same area and Tingana was the one that had moved off. And I wonder if maybe there's just a little shift. Tingana is starting to age a little bit, and Quarantine obviously is a younger, fitter individual. Maybe it's just starting to push him a little bit, and I wonder how this is all going to play out and whether we're going to start seeing more and more and more of Quarantine pushing westly towards Chitwa and maybe even the western side of Djuma. It's going to be super interesting. And then, of course, you've got these two youngsters in the form of Tumba and Hosana that are slowly but surely looking around, and maybe you're going to find a situation that Hosana and Tumba are both perfectly placed and perfectly aged to be around just as Tingana starts to become an old male. And if Tingana's not careful and doesn't push them out now, he's going to have a situation where he's going to have to try and deal with these two when they're fit 3-4-year-old males, and he's going to be on the better part of 14 at that stage. It's going to be very tough for him to keep these boys in line and keep them away. So I think it's going to be an interesting next year that we're going to see, and I have a funny feeling that a change in guard is going to take place within the next year, and I think Tingana is going to become a lot more like Mvula and become a lot more nomadic, and we're going to see a lot more of quarantine. That's my personal opinion. Whether I'm right is completely irrelevant and completely kind of up for debate, but that's just what I think is going to happen. I don't think Anderson wants to push this way too much. We've seen Djuma rather kind of inserting himself in that northern Simamili Arathusa area, and I think he's squeezing Tingana from that side. But what makes me interested is what's squeezing Djuma to go that way. What came from Buffelshoek that is causing Djuma to start pushing into Arathusa? Is it because there was females there that he followed? Maybe in Chile brought him from Buffelshoek and he saw an area and wanted to spend time there? Or is there another male that we just don't know about that's shy and skittish in the north of Buffelshoek that is starting to push these guys all south and changing the dynamic that we have with our male leopards? It's an interesting topic and one that we're only going to know the answer to as things play out. But I certainly think that quarantine is going to start pushing further west again and coming towards Chitwa. I think that's a given. He already is starting to making inroads into this area and starting to kind of be seen on Chitwa a lot more than what he was. And I think he's going to start pushing back a little bit. But hopefully he doesn't push too far, and that leaves a gap for Hosana to insert himself here on the southern section of Djuma, which would be quite nice. The thing is also is that by the time he reaches fully grown and a potentially capable age of mating, let's say 4 years old if he starts to mate for the first time, or 3.5, theoretically by then Thandi and Shadow should be on their last litter. I highly doubt they'll have any more litters after they reach 14 years old. And so the problem of him mating with his sisters will probably not be relevant. Hopefully, somebody like in Chile or something like that moves into the area, and then there's a little bit more of a diverse sort of bloodline. But it's going to be interesting nonetheless. Like I say, I'm super keen to see how this all plays out over the next few months and years, and we see how our young boys develop and become dominant individuals. The only thing that I can wish for with all of this is if they don't spend time on Djuma, is that wherever Hosana and Tumba end up, it's areas that are well kind of populated with guides, and that there can be some sort of photographic evidence and following of these guys as we can watch their story unfold from afar if they don't stay in this area. Right, now I believe Herbie and Noel have teamed up together and are still on their walk, and I believe they've got a little surprise. So let's jump across to them. I shudder to think what they're up to, but let's go and see what's going on. I do still have Hosana just chased a scrub here, and he's now kind of looking as though he might come back onto our side, or he's going to flop down in the shade. He got too hot, like I said he would, and he decided to move. It was quite funny watching him because he kind of got into this point where it was very hot, and then I can't deal with this, and so he decided to chase a scrub here for a bit, and then eventually got to a point where he's now sitting down. But I'm going to go forward because there are guys behind. So sorry, Sens. Let me just go forward a little bit. Hopefully our signal will stay and will not break up too much. I'm just going to actually go through. You know what, Sens? Let's go up onto the other side. It's going to be better. So I'm going to just go through, and we're going to have better signal and everything, so that we seem really weird that I'm going quite far. Right, so there we go. Sorry, guys. I just had to quickly cross the Mulawati, and that's lost reception for a bit. But we're back, and Hosana's straight across from us, so it actually works out a little bit better from where we are. We get a nice view of him as he's sitting in the shade watching, and it looks like he's looking north towards us. And so I think we're going to have Hosana at Twin Dams for the afternoon. That's what I think anyway. Hopefully that's going to be the case. Whether or not it is, well, it will remain to be seen. But he is looking northwards, which is fantastic news. And here he comes. He's coming straight towards us, which is going to be great. Hopefully he's going to cross into the Mulawati and then decide to come and rest at Twin Dams. That's what I'm hoping. Our young man has been absent from Twin Dams for quite some time, so it would be nice to see him coming back. And you see he's kind of stalking along. Isn't he looking beautiful? Hello, boy. Are you going to lie down right there and pose for everybody that's going to drive along the main road today? Yes, you are. He's sitting right on the verge of the road, absolutely perfectly poised. And I'm sure many a person that comes to the Sabi Sands today, if they're going to Chitwa or in Koro or Cheetah Plains, is going to be spoilt if they come past now, because they're going to see a leopard before they even get to a lodge, posing as properly as you could ever ask for. It is really quite something to see him up there. Look how regal he's looking, and look how his shoulders have filled out. He's getting really looking quite big. Evernagle, I think that was the name. Sorry if I got that wrong. But you want to know, does Hosana have friends? Yes, he has millions of friends around the world in the form of all of you, and as well as us here at Safari Live. We absolutely love Hosana. Whether he loves us, I don't know, but we're going to force our friendship on him. But in terms of actually in the wild, no, he doesn't really have friends. He's a leopard, and leopards, unfortunately, are solitary cats, and that's just how life goes. He might join up with other leopards at times, but it's generally over food items, or if he's picked up the scent of them and he's kind of investigating and coming and seeing what's going on. But it's not like he has friends that he hangs around with, unfortunately. He's a individual that spends all of his time really on his lonesome, other than if maybe a female comes past and he kind of joins up with Tundi or Shadow to see what they're up to, or sometimes even with Tumba and Tingana if he feels like it. But it's generally not that they're actually friends. It's more just a food or an area specific thing that they bump into one another. But I would like to think we're all his friends, and that's why he kind of spends a lot of time with us on Djuma. Of course, that's probably an absolute nonsense, but I'll just take it anyway, and like I say, that's what I'm going to go with. But he's definitely looking northwards. I'm hoping that he is going to come. I'm hoping he's not going to get into this Mulawati and just go south, back down into Little Gari like it looks like he might be. He's spotted something. You see, he's kind of seen something now, and now he's going southwards again. I don't know if maybe something's wallowing behind us at Baboon Pan that he's spotted from up there, or he's just going to use the cover to come down into the Mulawati itself. We're just going to have to see and have a little look. But I think that maybe potentially he's going to pop out somewhere in the Mulawati drainage. Now, whether or not he's going to come through and northwards is anyone's guess. So these guys will go down into the drainage itself, and they'll be able to tell us what he actually gets up to. But I think he might eventually come north. Now, I'm just giggling because Hosana's gone there in one of the other vehicles, which is an older model of the cruisers, which still has the locks on the wheels that you have to get out and turn, hasn't turned them, and they've gotten a little stuck in the Mulawati, which is not ideal for them. So we're going to have a situation where they might have to get out the car to actually get themselves out. But let's see where Hosana goes. Unfortunately, there's no visual of him at the moment. Hopefully he's going to come trotting north, and if he comes north, then we don't have to worry about seeing him this afternoon. But while we wait for him to come out and to get into this area, let's go across to Noel, who's still taking a beautiful stroll in the morning sunshine.